My name is Gabriel Morales. I'm 28 years old, and for the last 3 years, my life has been defined by logic, precision, and verifiable data. I'm an engineer at a place called Starlight Engineering. It's an aerospace facility, which is a fancy way of saying it's a high-security campus, where every single door, every hallway, and every minute of my day is tracked, logged, and recorded. I design components that have to withstand incredible forces where a miscalculation of a single millimeter can lead to catastrophic failure. My job is my sanctuary. It's a world that makes sense, a world of rules. Outside of those gates for the past 6 months, nothing has made sense at all. It's been 2 months since my younger brother Jackson was released from county jail. 60 days of silence. He's 26, and he now has a criminal record for perjury and filing a false police report. The person he filed that report against was me. There has been no contact. No angry phone call, no text message full of blame, not even a bitter email. Just a heavy, suffocating silence that says the war isn't over. The battle fought in a courtroom was just the opening skirmish. I won decisively, but the victory feels hollow. When the person you defeat is your own brother, what have you really won? The nightmare began 6 months ago with a knock on my apartment door. 2 police officers looking grim and professional asked if I knew my brother Jackson Morales. Then they told me why they were there. Jackson had reported a break-in at his apartment. Only one item was taken: the Morales family watch, an irreplaceable heirloom. He had named me as the sole suspect. According to his sworn statement, the theft occurred on a very specific day, Tuesday, October 17th. He claimed he had a witness who saw my car in the area. He painted a picture of a bitter older brother, jealous and greedy, sneaking into his apartment to steal the one thing that mattered most. I was told he cried when he gave his statement, playing the part of the victim perfectly. Listening to the officers, my first reaction wasn't anger. It was a deep, bone-chilling confusion. The accusation was so fundamentally impossible, so completely disconnected from reality that my engineer's brain couldn't process it. It was a logical fallacy, a bug in the system. On Tuesday, October 17th, I wasn't anywhere near my brother's apartment. I was at Starlight Engineering for 10 solid hours. My company has government contracts, security. There isn't a suggestion, it's a religion. To get onto the campus, you need a key card. To get into my building, the same key card. To get into my specific lab, you need the key card and a biometric scan. Every swipe is logged and time-stamped down to the millisecond. Beyond the key card data, there are the cameras covering every inch of the common areas. Then there were my coworkers. On that particular Tuesday, I was in a marathon session with my team, troubleshooting a guidance system. 5 of us were in a sealed lab for the entire day. We had lunch delivered. We didn't leave. So when the police asked for my alibi, I didn't just give them a story. I gave them a mountain of irrefutable digital proof. I told them to request the keycard access logs for employee number 741B and pull the security footage from Corridor C. I gave them the names of the 4 engineers who were with me for every minute of the alleged crime. My alibi wasn't just solid, it was a fortress. 2 days later, the investigation into me was closed. A new one was opened into Jackson. The case was swift. Confronted with the logs, the time-stamped videos, and the testimony of my colleagues, he had no defense. He had knowingly lied to law enforcement. He was convicted of perjury and sentenced to 90 days. I didn't attend the sentencing. The thought of watching the kid I taught how to ride a bike being sentenced because of a lie he told about me, it was too much. Which brings me to today. I'm standing in the cold, sterile vault of a downtown bank. An employee helps me open my safe deposit box and slides the long metal container onto a table in a private viewing room before closing the heavy door behind him. My hands are trembling slightly as I lift the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, is the Morales family watch. It's a 1955 model with a simple face and a worn leather strap. Its beauty is in its history. My grandfather bought it the year my father was born. When he passed, it went to my dad, who wore it with the same reverence. It was a constant ticking reminder of our family's timeline. 2 years ago, when we lost our dad, I was named the custodian of the watch in his will. As the elder son, I was its official keeper. I remember the look on Jackson's face when the will was read. It wasn't just disappointment. It was a flicker of resentment that in my own grief I chose to ignore. I pick up the watch. The metal is cool against my skin. This isn't just an object. It's a legacy of integrity, honor, and trust. And my brother tried to use it to send me to prison. He must have thought that if I were convicted of a felony, the watch would default to him. He saw me not as his brother, but as an obstacle to be removed. I slide the watch onto my wrist. The worn leather feels familiar and strange at the same time. I haven't worn it since the accusation. It felt tainted. But now I realize that's wrong. The watch isn't tainted. The legacy isn't tainted. The betrayal was Jackson's. I put the watch back in its velvet bed and lock it away. Walking out of the bank, the silence from my brother feels different. It's the sound of him regrouping. The 90 days in jail weren't a lesson. They were a head start for his anger to fester. He failed to take the watch and my freedom, so now he's going to try and take the one thing the law can't protect. I know a confrontation is coming, but this time I'll be ready. The first battle was fought with keycards and video footage. This next one will be fought with memory and truth. I'm no longer confused or just hurt. I'm an engineer who has analyzed the system and found the point of failure. I will not allow it to cause a catastrophic collapse. Not again. The inevitable confrontation didn't come in a flurry of angry phone calls or threatening texts. It came in the form of a family obligation wrapped in the guise of remembrance. The second anniversary of our father's passing was approaching, and my aunt called her voice, laced with a forced cheerfulness that set my teeth on edge. It was to be a small gathering at her house, a memorial lunch, just the close family, and yes, Jackson would be there. Her tone made it clear that my attendance was not optional. It was a command disguised as an invitation, a test to see if I was willing to put on a show of unity for the sake of our father's memory. For 2 months since Jackson's release, I had existed in a state of suspended animation. I went to work at Starlight Engineering. I came home, I existed. But part of me was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Part of me clung to a foolish, microscopic sliver of hope that 90 days in a county jail cell might have given him some perspective. That maybe, just maybe, he'd emerge with a flicker of remorse. That hope died the second I walked into my aunt's house. The low hum of conversation faltered for a half second as I stepped through the door. It was almost imperceptible, like a skip on a record, but I felt it. I felt the dozens of eyes that flickered towards me and then quickly away. They all knew. They didn't know the details, the keycard logs, the security footage, the perjury conviction, but they knew there was a chasm between the Morales brothers, and they were terrified of falling into it. And then I saw him. He was standing by the fireplace talking to one of our cousins. He looked diminished, thinner than I remembered, with a sallow tint to his skin. But it was his posture that struck me. He was hunched slightly, a defensive curl to his shoulders, as if he were constantly braced for a blow. He held a glass of water in his hand, gripping it so tightly his knuckles were white. He saw me enter. I know he did. His eyes darted towards the doorway for a fraction of a second, but he refused to let them land on me. He just turned back to our cousin, his jaw tight, and continued talking, his voice a little too loud, a little too forced. The air in the room was thick with unspoken words. It was suffocating. I made my way through the living room, nodding to relatives, accepting sympathetic pats on the shoulder that felt more like assessments. Every conversation was a minefield of forbidden topics. No one asked about my work because that was tied to my alibi. No one asked about Jackson because that was tied to his crime. We talked about the weather. We talked about sports. We talked about my aunt's new rose bushes. It was a masterclass in familial avoidance. I kept my distance from Jackson not out of fear but out of a clinical sense of observation. I was an engineer, and this was a volatile system I needed to understand. I watched him interact. He was playing a role, I could see it clearly. He was the wounded party, the prodigal son who had been wronged. He let his sentences trail off. He sighed heavily. He looked at the floor a lot. He was building a narrative of victimhood with every gesture, and some of my more sentimental relatives were buying it completely. The trigger when it came was exactly as I'd predicted. It wasn't a direct explosion, but a piece of carefully placed shrapnel designed to hit a specific target, me. I was getting a plate of food standing near the kitchen island. Jackson was a few feet away talking to our Aunt Carol, the family's biggest gossip. He must have known I was within earshot. In fact, I'm certain he waited for the perfect moment when the ambient chatter died down. Aunt Carol asked him how he was doing, her voice dripping with pity. Jackson just shook his head, slowly staring down at his plate. "You know," he said, his voice just loud enough to carry, "I was just thinking about Dad." He paused, letting the weight of the statement settle in the quiet room. He had this way of knowing things. A real sense of character. He took a small bite of food, chewing it deliberately. I could feel the eyes of everyone nearby on us darting back and forth between me and him. I didn't look up. I just focused on spooning potato salad onto my plate. My movements slow and measured. He always knew who to trust with the important things. Jackson continued, his voice taking on a bitter edge. And he knew who couldn't handle responsibility. He could see it. Who was solid and who wasn't. There it was. It wasn't just a jab. It was a complete inversion of reality. He was twisting our father's memory into a weapon, implying that Dad's decision to give me the watch was the mistake. He was painting a picture where he was the trustworthy one, and I, the brother with the stable career, the one who had never been in trouble with the law, was the one Dad should have been wary of. He was posthumously rewriting our father's will, trying to convince the family that he, Jackson, was the true heir to our father's legacy, and I was the usurper. In that moment, any lingering hope I had for him evaporated. It wasn't just gone, it was cauterized. The 90 days hadn't taught him a lesson about consequences. They had only taught him to be a better liar. He couldn't attack the facts of my alibi, the digital, time-stamped, irrefutable proof from Starlight Engineering. So he was launching a new assault on a different front. He was going after my character. I felt a cold calm settle over me. The hurt was still there deep down, but it was now encased in a layer of pure analytical clarity. My 26-year-old brother, wasn't sorry for trying to ruin my life. He was angry that he had failed. His time in jail hadn't been a period of reflection. It had been a 90-day brainstorming session on how to continue the war. I put a roll on my plate, my hand perfectly steady. I didn't look at him. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I wouldn't let him draw me into a screaming match in the middle of our father's memorial. That's what he wanted. He wanted me to lose my composure, to look like the unstable one, to give his narrative some shred of credibility. I refused to play his game. I turned and walked away from the food table, finding an empty chair in the corner of the room. I ate my lunch mechanically, the food tasteless in my mouth. I could feel his gaze on me burning into my back. He was waiting for me to crack. But I was an engineer. I understood stress tolerances. I knew the breaking point of materials, and I knew my own. He had fundamentally miscalculated. He thought he was chipping away at a rock. He didn't realize he was striking a forge, and all he was doing was making the steel harder. The battle for the watch was over. The battle for the truth, for the very memory of our father, had just begun, and I would not lose. The weeks that followed the memorial were quiet, but it was a tense, charged kind of quiet. The silence of a wire pulled taut humming with a frequency you can't quite hear, but you can absolutely feel. Jackson made no direct contact with me, and I certainly made none with him. But his campaign, the one he'd launched in the kitchen with that passive-aggressive monologue, was in full swing. I didn't have to see it to know it was happening. I could feel its tendrils reaching out, poisoning the well of our family, one phone call at a time. He was brilliant in a twisted sort of way. He couldn't attack my alibi that was a fortress of data and verifiable fact built by Starlight Engineering, so he didn't even try. Instead, he attacked my character. He started weaving a new narrative, a masterpiece of manipulation. He didn't deny that I was at work. In fact, he used it. He started telling our relatives that he knew I was at work. He claimed the whole thing was a misunderstanding, a stupid argument between brothers that got out of hand. But then he'd add the poison. He'd say that when he realized his mistake, he tried to drop the whole thing, but I wouldn't let him. He painted a picture of me as a cold, calculating monster. The story went that I, his older brother, saw an opportunity to teach him a lesson. He claimed I pushed the charges, that I went to the police and demanded they prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. He told them I saw a chance to get him out of the way, to put him in a cage, all because of some petty sibling rivalry. And the most disgusting part, he used his 90-day sentence not as a mark of shame, but as a badge of martyrdom. He was now the victim, the ex-con brother who had been crushed under the boot of his powerful, unforgiving sibling. He played on their sympathy, leveraging the very real consequences of his crime to frame himself as the one who had been wronged. I, Gabriel Morales, the quiet engineer, was reimagined as a cruel puppet master who had intentionally ruined his younger brother's life over a misunderstanding. The first direct hit came from my Aunt Carol, of course. She called me about a month after the memorial. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but with a sharp accusatory undertone. "Gabriel, honey," she started. "I was just talking to Jackson the other day. He sounds so broken." I stayed silent, letting her lay the trap. "He told me what happened," she continued, "about the misunderstanding and how you just wouldn't let it go. Honey, I know you two have had your differences, but to let him go to jail for 90 days, don't you think that was a little extreme? He's your brother." My grip on the phone tightened. "Aunt Carol," I said, my voice dangerously level. "Jackson filed a false police report. He committed perjury. He lied under oath. He did that. I didn't. But he's just a boy, Gabriel. He's only 26. He makes mistakes." She chirped back as if his age was a legal defense. "You're the older one. You're supposed to be the bigger person. Your father, God, rest his soul, would be so disappointed to see you treat your own blood this way." And that was it. The final straw. He wasn't just using his own lies, he was using our father's memory as a shield. He was turning our entire family against me, not with facts, but with feelings. And it was working. My victory in a court of law meant nothing in the court of family opinion. The legal battle was over, but the war for the truth had escalated. I couldn't let this fester. I had to face him. I had to end it. I called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice wary. "What do you want?" "We need to talk," I said, face to face. No more whispers, no more lies through our aunts. "You and me." He hesitated, then agreed. We decided to meet at his apartment. He probably thought having it on his home turf would give him an advantage. He was wrong. I wasn't coming to argue. I was coming to get a confession. When I arrived, the air in his small apartment was thick with resentment. He stood with his arms crossed, leaning against his kitchen counter, projecting an image of defiant victimhood. So he started, "Come to gloat to see how the other half lives now that you've saddled me with a criminal record." "No," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I came to hear you say it, Jackson, to my face. I want you to tell me the story you've been telling Aunt Carol and the others. Tell me how I'm the villain who put you in jail." He scoffed a bitter, humorless sound. "It's not a story, it's the truth. You could have stopped it. You could have told them it was a misunderstanding, but you didn't. You wanted to see me fall. You always have." "I always have." I took a step closer, my voice rising despite my best efforts to control it. "I've done nothing but try to help you your entire life. I co-signed for your first car. I helped you with rent when you lost that job. I have never done anything to hurt you. But you tried to destroy me. You tried to give me a criminal record, Jackson. You tried to take our father's watch. And for what? Tell me why." That's when his carefully constructed facade finally shattered. The victim act dissolved, replaced by a raw, spitting fury. His face contorted, his eyes blazing with a pain so deep it was almost shocking to see. "You want to know why?" he roared, his voice cracking. "Because it should have been mine. The watch should have been mine. It's a watch, Jackson. No, it's not a watch, he screamed, jabbing a finger in my direction. It was his final decision, his last word. All our lives it was Gabriel the responsible one, Gabriel the smart one, Gabriel the engineer. And I was just Jackson, the screw-up. I thought Dad saw me, I thought he knew I was trying, but then he died, and his will was read, and he gave the watch, Granddad's watch, the most important thing he owned to you. Only you. He was breathing heavily now, pacing the small space like a caged animal. It was his way of saying it one last time from the grave. Gabriel is the son I'm proud of. Jackson is the disappointment. He put his final stamp of approval on you, and he left me with nothing. So I was going to take it. I was going to take it, and I was going to discredit you in the process. I was going to prove to everyone that he made a mistake, that I was the one who deserved it. I just stared at him, the pieces clicking into place. So you tried to send me to prison, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You tried to ruin my career, my life, all because you felt like Dad loved me more. He finally stopped pacing and looked at me, a flicker of shame in his eyes, before it was extinguished by another wave of anger. I didn't think it would go that far, he mumbled. I just knew you had to be taken down a peg. Did you ever once, I asked, in your grand plan, consider my job? The fact that I've been at Starlight Engineering for 3 years, the high security, the key cards, the constant surveillance, did any of that ever factor into your brilliant scheme? He looked away, staring at a crack in the wall. No, he admitted, his voice small. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about the watch, and Dad, and you, and there it was. The whole tragic, pathetic truth. His resentment was a fire that had burned so hot it had made him blind. He didn't see me, his brother, with a life and a career. He just saw a symbol of his own inadequacy. He didn't formulate a plan. He just lashed out with all the clumsy, desperate rage of a wounded child. The anger drained out of me, replaced by a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. I saw him for what he was, not a criminal mastermind, not a cold, calculating villain, just my broken 26-year-old brother drowning in a sea of his own insecurity and willing to pull me under with him. I understood the why now, but understanding didn't excuse it. I knew with absolute certainty that our relationship was over. I couldn't fix him. All I could do was protect myself. I took a deep breath. I'm done, Jackson, I said softly. I'm done with the lies, the anger, the fighting. I'm done. I turned and walked to the door, not looking back. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. The storm had finally broken. His confession replayed in my head for days. I understood his pain, that deep-seated feeling of being second best, but empathy isn't absolution. His pain didn't give him the right to try and destroy my life. He was a 26-year-old man who made his own choices. That realization severed the final thread of guilt I felt. My only responsibility now was to my own peace of mind, which meant establishing a boundary he could not breach. A week later, I asked him to meet me at a small neutral coffee shop. When he arrived, he looked tired. The fire I had seen in his eyes was gone, replaced by a sullen emptiness. Jackson. I began my voice calm and even. I've thought a lot about what you said. I understand that you're in pain, and I'm sorry for the pain you felt about Dad. I truly am. He looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes, probably expecting an olive branch. But I wasn't there to build a bridge. I was there to build a wall. But, I continued, that is where my responsibility ends. I will no longer be the target for your anger or your insecurities. The lies to the family stop. The manipulation stops. The blame stops. Today. If you ever want to have any kind of relationship with me again, it will be on my terms. Term 1, you get professional help. You need to talk to a therapist about Dad, about all of it. Term 2, you start making genuine amends. You tell the family the whole truth. He started to protest, but I held up a hand. This is not a negotiation, Jackson. This is the only path forward that includes me. If you choose not to take it, I will respect that. But you need to understand it will mean we are done. I will cut you out of my life completely, not out of anger, but for my own survival. Finally, I addressed the object that started it all. As for the watch, I said, it's staying in the safe deposit box. It is not a prize to be won. It is a family legacy. Maybe one day, if you do the work and our family actually heals it, can be something we share. Until then, it will remain where it is a legacy to be honored, not a weapon to be used. I finished my coffee and stood up. He just sat there staring into his cup. He looked small. The choice is yours, Jackson. I said softly, I hope you make the right one. And then I walked away. As I stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, I didn't feel angry or sad. I felt light. The war was over, not because I had won, but because I had chosen to stop fighting. My victory wasn't about the watch or winning family approval. It was the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I had stood firm in the truth and had taken back control of my own life. Whether my brother ever decided to cross that bridge was up to him. I was finally moving on.